Jeff, so glad you could join us today, because how remarkable that you and your family from London, Ontario find yourself in Leicester, direct descendants of this king who now many people say is getting the dignified burial this week that he is due. Please start by telling me your impressions of what you saw today with the ceremony.
Well, dignified, and the phrase that kept being repeated was with dignity and honor. So I think everybody's trying to drive that point home, because his exit from the battle, when he was killed in battle, was certainly undignified. His body was stripped naked, and people tried to humiliate him as much as they could.
Well, known to be, if you listen to Shakespeare, certainly, Richard III, known to be quite a tyrant. What did he call him? The hunchback, tyrannical, hunchbacked, bloodthirsty monster, to paraphrase what Shakespeare was defining the king. When you found out that your family was actually related to this man, what did you think? I
thought it was pretty cool, actually. I mean, everybody loves a villain, right? If he was known to be particularly benign and good king, it would be less exciting.
Why do you think this reburial has attracted such international attention? Is it because of the centuries-old impression of this king? Because I gather even today there's still a bit of division on whether or not he receives the dignified burial he's getting this week.
Yeah, I suppose there's a lot of arguments. Certainly history is written by the victors, and the Tudors defeated Richard on the battlefield, and Shakespeare was definitely trying to please the Tudor rulers at the time, I would suggest. And I think that the treatment he received in Shakespeare's play was a bit exaggerated. I don't think he was necessarily the villain that he's portrayed as, but on the other hand, this is the Middle Ages, and if you wanted to be king, you have to go out and kill the existing king.
We did talk about the hunchback, and I gather as part of when they found this skeleton and hoping this might be him, the fact that there was that curvature of the spine was one of the first clues that this could be Richard III. And then began the battle to find out DNA proof, and that leads us to you and your family. For those who may not be familiar with how that all came about, tell us how you actually found out that you are a relative of Richard III.
Oh, well, we found out a long time ago, back in 2004. My mother was actually contacted by a historian who was not looking for Richard, was looking for the remains of one of Richard's sisters, Margaret. And he asked my mother for a DNA sample to try and identify some remains that were found in Belgium. So it was kind of sort of a side story that perhaps, you know, one day, if they ever find the skeleton of Richard, our DNA could also be used to identify him, and look what happened.
It's amazing, and that you and your family were there today. We know the internment happens on Thursday. Tell me a little bit more about today. I gather there were several ceremonies, several different religious officials all along this route, where they took the coffin as well to where King Richard fell in battle.
That's right. It started at the University of Leicester, where his remains have been actually kept for the last few years since he was discovered, so that they could do the DNA analysis, etc. There's a ceremony at the university today, and we all put white roses on the coffin, which was actually made by my brother, who's a cabinet maker. And then we proceeded to not the Battle of not the Bosworth battlefield, where everybody assumed he had been killed, but it's a place called Fen Lane Farm, and there's a small private ceremony with the coffin, because historians have discovered that's actually the place where the battle took place and where Richard was killed. And then after that, we went to the Bosworth battlefield for another more elaborate ceremony, and from there the coffin was taken back through the streets of Leicester, and it just passed by me actually about 45 minutes ago, and it is now in the cathedral.
It's a fascinating journey, and especially your Canadian connections. Before we let you go, Jeff Ibsen, I just want to ask you what this internment on Thursday of your distant relative, King Richard III, means to your family.
Oh, well, you know, it's been a crazy experience, for sure. You know, this is the first time I've come over ever since the skeleton was discovered. So back in Canada, there's not that much. The interest is nothing compared to the interest here, especially in Leicester. There was thousands and thousands of people on the streets today. It was quite exciting. So I think it's now starting to sink in for me how much this means for the people in England and specifically here in Leicester.